Hey guys, Ronen here. In today's video, we're gonna be comparing a rich driver versus a poor driver. What do we mean by that? So I'm gonna be taking two drivers with the exact same trucks, with the exact same engines, with the exact same mileage. The difference between driver number one and driver number two is one driver took home $5,000 in 15 days, and the second driver took only $2,000 home in 15 days. So we're gonna be comparing two drivers with the identical trucks. So both trucks are 2018 Freightliner Cascadias. Both drivers are in our lease purchase program. Both drivers drove 6,000 miles. Both drivers drove 6,000 miles between March 1st and March 15th. Both engines are Detroit DD15s automatics. And lastly, both drivers were on the road for 11 to 12 days out of the 15-day pay period. So we're gonna dissect this video into two parts. Part number one, we're gonna be actually going through their pay. We're gonna be going through their fuel habits and how they filled up and the routes that they took. In the second part of this video, we're gonna be going through their data analytics. So we're gonna look at how much fuel they consumed, what their idling time was for both, and what happened with their pays, and why did one driver take $5,000 home while the other driver took $2,000 home. But before we get into that, I'm gonna talk about 4 different ways that drivers can save money while being on the road. So the most important and contributing factors to fuel consumption would be obviously driving at optimal speeds, your acceleration, so how fast you accelerate when you're at a red light. Number 3 is your idling time, and number 4 is trip planning. So make sure that you get your cheapest fuel while you're driving to a certain destination. So if you're going from Toronto to Atlanta, Georgia, pre-plan your fuel stops. Hey guys, Ronen here. I wanted to personally thank you for watching this video. I've been recruiting drivers for about 15 years now, and I've heard hundreds and hundreds of stories of how drivers are getting mistreated by their current employers and how they're being taken advantage of by our current industry providers. So I wanted to create a channel in order to unite North American drivers, share my knowledge, educate drivers to become more successful, and hopefully one day to make a positive impact on our industry. Some concerns that I have in our industry revolve around how drivers are being mistreated by their current employers, safety on the road, parking for drivers, and driver compensation. When we unite, we can make a difference. This video and this channel is not meant for recruiting purposes. As me and my team continue to produce high quality and interesting videos, I do need your support in order to make a difference in this North American market. Please subscribe to our channel. And if you're enjoying the video you're watching, give it a thumbs up. And now, back to the video. We'll start off with the guy that took home $2,000 first. So here he is, a driver who drove 5,975 miles. This driver drove 6,000 miles. Okay, they're both on a lease purchase program. So this driver pays $1,325 on his lease. It's a 2018 Freightliner Cascadia with a Detroit DD15 engine, and it's an automatic. Both drivers pay disability insurance. Both drivers pay buy-down insurance. This driver grossed out $8,882. He spent $1,066 in fuel in Canada and spent $3,433 in fuel in the US driving 6,000 miles. He did have one overweight ticket, which is $390, and he took home $2,030 at the end of the month. So the whole time he did cross-border. Now let's look at his fuel. So he has Canadian fuel and US fuel. So he filled up at $2.87 per gallon, then $3 per gallon, and then back to $2.99 per gallon in Michigan. So I don't see anything wrong with that. I do see that it's a little bit too frequent, the amount of fuel that he's filling up. So we're gonna dissect it even further when we go into the data analytics. Driver number 2 grossed out $9,459. He drove 6,330 miles. This driver drove 330 miles more than the first driver, so I kind of expect his pay to be about $500 or $600 more than the first driver. I do not expect his pay to be $3,100 more than the first driver. So obviously they're doing something different. Now let's look into it. So this driver also has a lease payment, so that's identical. They both have disability liability insurance and they're paying the same amount. They both have buy down insurance and they're paying the exact same amount. Now let's look at this driver. Why is he only filling up $852 in Canada and then another $1,611 in the US? How did this driver do it? This driver is driving more of the Midwest USA and Southeast USA. I can see that he gets home a lot more frequent. If he is an Ontario driver, he gets home a lot more frequent. The first driver was doing the West Coast runs. This driver is more doing shorter runs, about 5 to 1,000 mile radius from the GTA. So this driver fills up pretty much same price point as the first driver. He's filling up about $2.93, which is the cheapest, till about $3.15, which is the most expensive. This rings a red alarm for me when I see one driver taking home $2,000 and the other driver taking home $5,100. The one big difference that I see with drivers, their speed. So if you are driving here in Ontario, our trucks are governed. They need to be locked at 65 miles an hour. But the drivers that are driving 62 and 61 miles an hour are getting a much better fuel consumption than the drivers that are driving 65 miles an hour. Now, there are some cases that we don't know of where drivers will take the truck and they will get them opened. So this will allow them to drive more than 65 miles an hour. This really is the only way that we can catch them. So when I see somebody driving 6,000 miles and taking home $2,000, 100% there's something wrong with his truck. There's something mechanically wrong with his truck, or the guy is driving 70, 75 miles an hour and we just don't know about it. So let's dive into the analytics of both these trucks. When I open up the analytics for these trucks, I get a graph of something like this, where I select the date range, which is March 1st to March 15th, which is the pay period for both these drivers. Okay, so I really wanted to compare apples to apples so you guys see the difference between the two different types of drivers. We will take the better driver of the two. When I take a date range of March 1st to March 15th, those 15 days, the average fuel consumption of his truck is 8 miles per gallon. Okay, so this driver burned 783 gallons over the course of those 15 days. His distance was 6,256 miles. The second most important thing is idle time. Okay, so that's a huge factor in your fuel consumption. Some drivers will have 30%, 25% idle time, which is, it's a lot of hours to be idling. And then other drivers, anything under 15% is acceptable. Anything under 10% is great. And then anything under 5% is phenomenal. Very hard to see drivers that are under 5%. This driver over here, which is driver number one that got 8 miles per gallon, his idle time over the course of those 15 days were only 10.9%. So that's really good. So now let's take the stats of driver number two, the lower driver that only took home $2,000. So his stats, March 1st to March 15th, the Freightliner Cascadia 2018 Detroit DD15 has 5.6 miles per gallon. Okay, so this is the huge red flag. Why in the world is a truck that should be consuming no less than 7.5 miles per gallon consuming 5.6 miles per gallon? So the amount of gallons that he used is 1,063 gallons. The distance that he drove is 5,979 miles, and he has 23.9% idle time. Okay, so that's huge. So two things are alarming over here. Number one is 5.6 miles per gallon, and number two is the idle time on this truck. These trucks all have APU units on them. There should be no reason why this truck is idling so much in 15 days. Driver probably just leaves the truck on, maybe sleeps with the truck on at nighttime. 5.6 miles per gallon is indicating one thing and one thing only, that the driver has unlocked his truck and is driving at 70, 75 miles per hour. After I see this kind of analytics, I actually call the driver and I talk to him about this, because really, if you're making $2,000 in 15 days, you need to think about your family and you need to think about your financial goals. There's absolutely no reason why you should be working in this job. There's no reason why you should be away from your family for, I would say, 12 days out of the 15 days, and you only bring home $2,000 in 15 days. You need to be bringing at least, at the bare minimum, $4,500 in 15 days, about $9,000 a month net after all your expenses you should be bringing home. I did create a graph over here of the difference in fuel consumption. Truck number one and truck number two, 12,000 miles per month, which is what these drivers, if I take the monthly data, okay, and I just show you the difference between a driver who's driving at 5.8 miles per gallon and a driver that's driving at 8 8 miles per gallon. So if you look at this graph, basically it tells you driving 12,000 miles, which is what both these drivers would do at the end of the month based on their 15 days. One driver at 5.8 miles per gallon would consume 2,068 gallons. The driver that's driving 8 miles per gallon would consume only 1,500 gallons. Converting that into the average cost here that I see is about $305, $310 US. Driver number one spent $6,400 US. Driver number two spent $4,650 US in fuel. When you calculate the difference between driver number one and driver number two, that's $1,760 US is the difference between truck number one and truck number two. If you're going to be converting, which is what we do here in Ontario, we convert the US dollars into Canadian dollars. Driver number one spent $8,000 Canadian in fuel. Driver number two spent $5,800 in fuel. So the difference for both these drivers is $2,200 is the difference between driver number one and driver number two. So that's pretty much what happened here. Basically, all this guy's money, the one that took home $2,000, he could have made $5,000 also, but he decided to take that fuel and blow it up his chimney. So he just decided to consume a lot more fuel than the other driver. The driver, that had his truck governed, that drove 62, 63 miles per hour, he's the one that's bringing home the $5,000 to his family, to his wife, to his kids, and he's the one that's going to be accomplishing his goals much faster than truck number one. Truck number one, I brought him into the office, I talked to him, I took his truck into the shop to make sure that that truck is governed, and it was not governed. We locked it up at 65 miles per hour. I'm gonna do a follow-up video on what he was able to get second time around, and then I actually even wanted to do a test with him and told him that his fuel consumption would probably even be closer to 9 miles per gallon if you locked your truck at 62 miles an hour. So the difference between 62 miles an hour and 65 miles an hour can make a huge difference. Just like these two drivers have a big difference, I truly believe, and I will be doing a video on this and testing it out, but we'll leave that for a second video. But the first graph took into consideration that the fuel costs $3.10 per mile. The second graph that I took into consideration is what would happen if the fuel bumped up to $3.40 per mile. What kind of difference would they see on their pays? So taking the exact same formulas, drivers driving 12,000 miles per month, one driver driving at 5.8 miles per gallon, the other driver driving at 8 miles per gallon, the difference in pays that they would have would be $1,931 US, and for us Canadians it would be $2,414 monthly that you would be saving by driving 8 miles per gallon versus 5.8 miles per gallon. I know I'm gonna have a lot of controversy on this. For those drivers, Canadian drivers, that believe that filling up in Canada is a lot better than filling up in the US, I'm totally against it. I tell all our drivers to fill up 75% in the US, 25% in Canada, especially in the spring, summer, and fall. I like to see more of the US fuel and Canadian fuel. In the winter months, December, January, and February, I like to see a bigger portion of their fuel be Canadian fuel because we all know that Canadian fuel is a little bit better. We've done the math a few times, it just makes more sense for us. So it's worth it to pay the IFTA bill and get the discount every single time when you fill up versus vice versa. I prefer to fill up in the US, get a little bit of a bill, a $300-400 bill every quarter, but I save at least $100 to $200 every fill up when I fill up in the US versus when I fill up in Canada. And guys, driving habits is just one way to save on your trips and bring home more money to your family and to your kids, or to achieve your financial goals a lot faster. There are other ways that you can save. A big one is the food that we buy, whether you're dining in at restaurants versus making your own food. Coffee is a huge one, whether you're buying coffee or you're doing drip coffee and capsules. Another big one would be doing a proper PTI to avoid breakdowns on the road.